Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Certified Together series. This is episode number 2 I'm recording today of AWS Security Specialist Examination. Now, if you are still new to the series and if you are not aware of the format of the kind of idea behind the whole series, then you can still check out episode 1. If you are a regular listener on our older way of audio podcasting, then you must be aware of what kind of certification we have covered already and what's our plan from moving on. But still, I recommend that you check out episode 1 first, because in episode 1 I did cover a bit about AWS security specialist examination as well, like kind of questions or what's the duration of the exam, how much it's going to cost to you, how you can take it. So all those sort bits are covered in episode 1. I won't repeat them, of course, because this is episode 2, and with every episode you of course expect something new. So in this today's episode, what we will be covering is a walkthrough of the syllabus. Now, syllabus walkthrough is very important, and I know means every human, every person should learn from their mistakes, even if they are like not really mistakes, but whatever things they can do to improve themselves. In our CCSP series last time, what I never did was to cover the whole syllabus upfront. So if you recall, every episode I used to tell you guys like what kind of topics and subtopics will be covered for this episode and what you can expect from the next episode as well. So a brief idea about what kind of subtopics we will be covering in the next episode. I never did an advanced walkthrough of the syllabus, and I felt for this particular series and this particular certification, it's better like we have some idea about the topics, about the syllabus, about the number of domains, what kind of subtopics we can expect from the whole examination, and it's going to give us some idea about how long it's going to take to take this like whole journey, how long it will take us, and of course it will give us hint like I'm fully committed to this examination and of course I have to give it. But if you are maybe if you are planning to take it means, or if you are confused like maybe I should take it or not, this walkthrough will help you like decide whether you want to fully commit toward this examination, or maybe this is not something for you, because AWS security specialist, from the name itself we can understand that it's only focusing on particular vendor, particular cloud service provider. So you won't be getting like a generic cloud computing idea, you won't be getting a generic security concepts around the whole cloud services. It will be only AWS specific. So maybe by end of this 3 or 4 episode, however much I will take, you will get a better idea whether you really want to take it, or maybe you want to go for something else, maybe you want to go for another non-vendor specific examination. So it's really good means, that's why this time I thought it doesn't matter like when we will be starting real topics, we should first get like good clarity on the type of questions or on the type of topics we will be getting for this, we'll be covering for this series and this certification. So that's the whole idea behind this whole 3 or 4 episodes which I'll be covering. So today's episode will be covering a bit about what kind of topics and tasks will be coming in the domain 1. Maybe if there is a time, then we can cover domain 2 as well. Now remember, if you recall, in episode 1 I told you that these episodes will be shorter now and coming more frequently. So of course you won't have to wait for like 2 or 3 months for finishing all the just walkthrough of the syllabus. What we will be doing is like quick short episodes every week, and by end of February maybe we will cover whole syllabus as well. So then we have better idea like what we have to do and what kind of topics we have to cover in this journey of certification. So that's the whole idea behind this episode. Of course, now it's time for a short break, and after the break we will be moving on to our main episode. Now those of you who are listening on video, you might be thinking like what kind of ad break we have now, because in audio format in my podcasting website where I host, we have this provision where I can choose where ad comes. So that's why I just announced that we will be coming after the ad break. So you will be getting this warning in each and every episode. Maybe on YouTube it doesn't matter, but for the guys who are still listening, it matters. So my primary listeners, I still feel, are those who supported me during my initial journey, those who like really listen to me while they are on their day-to-day work, they are going for a run, they are going for a walk. So still I'm primarily focused on those guys. So if you are watching on YouTube, then maybe this ad break is not relevant for you. All right, so for the rest of the episode, what I'll be doing is I'll be sharing my screen and I'll be going through on the topics of domain 1. each we will take like tick box on each of the topics, and of course we will have better idea of domain one in today's episode. Now those of you who are listening and who cannot watch, of course, then don't worry, I will be still reading everything, so you won't be missing anything. Like there's no need to watch and read, and you can even like simply listen to me, because I will be covering each and everything, so I won't be missing anything around that. Now another thing which I want to highlight here though, for AWS exam, because we are concentrating on a particular cloud service provider, it's good to have a AWS account as well. Now this AWS account you can create yourself, it's completely free. All you need is your email ID and your credit card. They won't charge you anything unless you of course exceed a particular quota, and they give good amount of quota if for 1 year, I think. And so if you create a new account, you will get that quota anyhow. So it's good to have that account, because as part of this series we'll be dealing only with AWS specific services. So it's not like CCSP where it was like covering cloud computing concept and how you can secure different components of cloud. This will be only dealing with AWS based services and how we can use different services to secure different AWS services. So nowhere in the examination, for sure, means nowhere in the whole study guide as well, we will be getting this kind of recommendation that AWS provide this security solution, but it's better you go with Azure for this particular type. No, they will be only covering AWS. And this brings up another important topic which we read extensively in CCSP, vendor lock-in. So in a way, when you are going for this examination and when you're reading about AWS security specialist, you are kind of locking yourself to a particular vendor. So if you are not working at all in AWS, and if you are only listening it because you want to learn more about cloud security, but you don't have any idea about AWS, and maybe don't foresee learning or reading about AWS anytime soon, maybe your or your organization is extensively in Azure side of things, then of course it doesn't make sense to go through about AWS security solutions. So that's why, means I'm giving these repetitive warnings, like who this certification or who this whole series itself is targeted to. So even though like as a podcaster, as a host, what I should be doing is I will be, for of course getting wider audience, I should be covering some more like generic and known vendor specific certification. Unfortunately this time around I thought AWS security specialist fits perfectly, and I'll be telling the reason why as well. Now AWS is still market leader, trust me. You have Azure, you have GCP, you have Oracle, you have multiple cloud service providers. Some of them are public, some of them are private vendors. You have on-prem, you have Red Hat, OpenShift, OpenStack, all those sort of different vendors, different organizations who provide cloud-based services. AWS still leads them all, means they started this all the way back, I think in 2000s, and they are still the market leader. They are pioneer, and every time, every year, they have this nice revisit of all the existing solution, and they try to come up with new ideas. They try to improve their services. Whatever feature you feel you need in your organization, AWS covers that. Means if you are going for any certification exam, then of course this is not for you. But if you are really working in AWS, and even if you are like having slight idea about AWS and you want to learn about AWS security solutions, this examination fits perfectly for us, and this certification is something we should eye on. Now, as part of this particular episode, as I promised, I'll be sharing my screen and going through with each topics. So let me share my screen, and I will be going through domain one. All right, if you're watching on YouTube, then of course you can see my screen. If you're not, then I'll be reading all the domains as I promise you. So domain one is threat detection and incident response, which is 14%. Domain 2 is around security logging and monitoring, which is 18%. Now, just try to understand here. These topics, if you recall, they came in CCSP syllabus as well, somewhere in the cloud security operations. In this examination, they are coming in right away, like in domain 1 and domain 2. So maybe what I realized after reading through this list of domains, maybe they want us to think from the perspective of cloud security operations guy, or someone who is working in SecOps, or someone who have to deal with like real incidents, and who have to come up with different solution, different ideas, how you work in planning all those like threat detection, how you can plan your monitoring system and everything, at least from domain 1 and domain 2. So they are first concentrating on the operational side of things, so that we have to keep in mind that. Now domain 3 is infrastructure security, which is 20%, and I feel like this is something which is, might be, I'm just guessing here, but might be more closer to me or more easier for me, to be honest, because I'm already working on infrastructure side of things. So securing that, maybe in a way I am already doing that. I might be, because I use all those security groups, knackles and everything. So maybe most of the aspect I'm already covering as part of infrastructure security. But let's see, I'm just guessing that. Domain 4 is around IAM, identity and access management. Now again, this is 16%, and I want to repeat here the terms come IAM. We all know, means if you are in tech industry, you know that Microsoft and Azure Active Directory is more extensively used compared to AWS IAM, of course, because AWS managed directory, they have tried to replicate it as Active Directory, but Azure and Microsoft is still pioneer in that side. So in this exam, when they are talking about IAM, they will be still covering from the perspective of AWS. So don't expect to read or go from this idea that, oh, I worked in Azure side of things, so maybe this is easier for me. This is completely AWS IAM. Domain 5 is data protection. Now data, of course, come on, data is something which everyone want to secure. So data protection is 18%. And last bit is around management and security governance. So that's domain 6, and it is covering 14%. Now, maybe in management and security governance side of things, we will be covering aspects like costing and everything as well. Because cost optimization is really important. If you have created your AWS account so far, you must be aware, like you got some, like I mentioned, you will be getting some sort of quota, and you have to make sure that you're not breaching that quota. Otherwise, you have to pay a lot of money. And AWS is something, means if you create some random services and they are really expensive, it's gonna cost like anything. So we have to make sure that billing and costing is up to mark. Now, of course, as I told you, like as part of this certification, we might have to use AWS console and AWS services regularly, and we have to see how they look like, because it's one thing to say these fancy name like use AWS Inspector, use AWS Macy, have you created your S3 bucket around that? But if you are not having like real look and feel, it might get confusing soon. So it's best to have your account. What I'll be doing, of course, is because I'll be using these services to test the whole concept and before sharing in the episode format. So I will make you guys aware of the costing bit as well. So if you have taken, for example, like me, you have created a yearly account and you have received some limit before which you start getting billed. So you have to, of course, not breach that limit. And I'll make sure that I'll tell you guys, like for this particular service, limit is like 20,000 API calls, or maybe 1 gig of storage you can have. So of course we won't be doing like advanced use cases, because we are not a big organization. We are having a test personal account, so we won't be going in really like creating n number of services. But still we have to keep track of everything what we are doing. So I'll be sharing that information with you as well, so don't worry about that. And let me know if you want me to make an episode around creating that AWS account and how you can make sure that your organization and everything initial setup is there. Because once your account is created, you get a root account. We don't have to use that root account, means it's as simple as that. We have to create another user account which should be having the admin access, and we of course have to configure multi-factor authentication as well. So let me know if you want me to cover all those aspects as well. I'll be happy to do it. Means I have created it like so many times. Even my organization Technocofe had some, I think, 10,000 words of credit, but it was for 1 year, so I have lost all that credits and now have to go with this yearly limited quota anyhow. But let me know if you want me to cover that. I'll do that. All right. So for domain one, the first topic is, oh, they first of all, they don't call their topics as topics. They call as task statements. So these are our tasks. Okay. So first task statement is design and implement an incident response plan. I think incident response plan we covered in CCSP as well. Was it like 5 stages? Identify, detect, respond, recover, something like that. So maybe those concepts will come again here. AWS best practices for incident response, cloud incidents, roles and responsibility in the incident response plan, and AWS security finding format. So we have to have knowledge of all these concepts. And then they mention the skills as well. So as part of this, you need to have skills in AWS IAM and AWS Secrets Manager. Those are like simple services. IAM is for identity and access management. Secret services help you keep like your secrets. You can store your secrets in encrypted format and whatnot. Isolating AWS services, design and implementing playbooks and runbooks for responses to security incidents. I'm not sure whether it's talking about like playbooks or runbooks, which are some AWS cloud native service, or it's just talking about like playbooks and runbooks as in some documentation. But we'll see when we'll cover like real topics. Deploying security services. Okay, AWS Security Hub, Guard Duty, Macy, Inspector, Config, Amazon Detective, IAM Access Analyzer. So these are the security services which we might be using in this to solve this task statement. So that's where our hands-on experience will come in handy. Configuring integration with native AWS services and third-party services using Amazon Event Bridge and ASFF. So I've not worked in ASFF. I have some idea about Event Bridge. So we'll see about this task statement, means this skill as well. Next task statement is detect security threats and anomalies by using AWS services. Now, again, highlight is by using AWS services. You're not supposed to use like any third party or Azure or GCP or any other solution, AWS services. As part of this, you should be having knowledge of AWS managed security services that detect threats. Okay. Anomaly and correlation techniques to join data across services, visualization to identify anomalies. Oh, okay. I was not aware that you can do visualization as well. Strategies to centralize security findings. Although I'm working in AWS for quite a while now, their visualization, I don't find it really exciting, but yeah, it could come in handy. And of course, no third party. So we have to stick with their visualization solution, whatever it is. Now, as part of this task statement, you should be having skills in Guard Duty, Security Hub, Macy, AWS Config, and IAM Access Analyzer. Searching and correlating security threats across AWS services, for example, using Detective. Performing queries to validate security events, for example, by using Amazon Athena. Okay. Creating metric filters and dashboard to detect anomalous activities, for example, by using CloudWatch. So I worked with Athena. I have worked with Amazon CloudWatch, Access Analyzer, Config. Yeah, I'm aware of some of the services. I'm not aware about Macy, Security Hub, Guard Duty. Yep, it will be fun again. Task statement 1.3. Respond to compromised resources and workloads. For this, you need knowledge of AWS Security Incident Response Guide. Wow. So they give their own guide. Resource isolation mechanism. Now, one thing to highlight here, AWS provides like really good documentation and their support service is really incredible. Their solution architect, their customer support team, whatever you ask them, like if you are doubtful yourself, and even AWS community as well, it's quite active because of course so many people use it and people give their own recommendation. You will get like nice ideas, nice solution. So nowhere down the line, if you're working in AWS or if you're starting in AWS, it's not like you have to start on your own. You'll find like a lot of content on the internet around AWS, how you can make it better designs, better well architected framework, what kind of security solutions you should be using, what kind of design you should have. If you are creating, for example, recently I created a centralized network architecture where all of my traffic from different regions was going via hub. So a hub spoke architecture. If you are working in legacy networking, you must be aware in MPLS we used to have this hub and spoke kind of network. I created something similar in AWS as well. And what I realized after creating that, AWS documentation also have the full blog how to do it. So if I would have like referred that, would have saved some time in creating everything by scratch. But yeah, what I realized later is if you refer those documentation, if you refer online, you will find a lot of nice contents. Why I bring up here, because this one is saying that incident response guide. So this is again something you don't have to create from scratch. AWS provides something. Resource isolation mechanism, techniques for root cause analysis, data capture mechanisms, log analysis for event validation. So these are the task statement knowledge we should be having. And it will use skills in AWS Step Function, Event Bridge, System Manager runbooks. Okay, so runbooks, I think it's talking here about AWS System Manager. I've used AWS System Manager, but I've never used, like, I've never seen runbook which are associated with it. So maybe a new knowledge. Responding to compromised resources, isolating Amazon EC2 instance. Our favorite EC2 is here. Investigating, analyzing to conduct root cause analysis. EBS snapshot, memory dump. Querying logs in S3 for contextual information related to security events by using Athena, surprise. Protecting and preserving forensic artifacts using S3. Preparing services for incidents, recovering, and services after incident. Now, have you observed something? If you are watching or if you are listening, have you observed something here? Even the artifacts, even those forensic details and reports and documents, you have to store on S3. You can store on your own storage solution. So again, I want to highlight this certification exam is only for AWS. And of course, AWS want to use their services. That's how CSPs work. Like that's how their business run, right? If you want something, we have a solution for that thing. You want a more secure solution? Here we go. Another solution, another services which we can put on top of it. Of course, it will be built separately. Oh, you want to have like some sort of notification? Okay, we have another service. So this is how CSP work, and every use case is covered by them. If something is not covered, if you as a customer and you as an organization go to that CSP and tell them like we have this use case, can you cover it? Otherwise we'll getting for from someone else, we'll be getting from some other vendor. They will create that service for you. Of course it will be charged separately. So that's how CSP whole business work, and that's how we as an end user we get a nice solution around AWS or around any cloud, to be honest. And that's why means people who are still doubtful about going for cloud computing or whether they should host their infra onto the cloud, cloud is really secure if you are aware of the services which you want to use, and if you are like aware of what kind of design you need to implement, what's the idea behind the application which you want to host, and how you want to treat that application, how you want to make it secure. If you are not aware of it, hire some consultant, use AWS documentation, follow AWS best practices or Azure best practices or GCP. I'm here not promoting AWS, to be honest. I am I really work on Azure. I really love Azure as well because some of the services in Azure are really exciting. And Azure, of course, like those identity, those Active Directory and everything, Azure is still working like it's the best solution in that side of things. So I'm not promoting AWS at any level. I am just a user of AWS. Same like I'm user of Azure as well. So I'm open to anything. Means I love working in multi-cloud, and only thing what I want to say is for this certification, for this journey which you are starting for AWS security specialist, we will be only unfortunately covering in AWS side of things. If I want to switch to like if after this examination, if we get something for Azure side of things, we'll be talking about Azure. But for this now, I'll be only talking about AWS and the benefits of AWS. So don't take me wrong, but yes, AWS for this whole year is the number one solution, is the only cloud computing solution we'll be talking about. Now, of course, you will be expecting more episodes around this syllabus walkthrough. I will be not covering more topics today because, of course, I don't want to make it longer. However, what you can expect now is a nice session with one of the guests in the next episode. So, I mentioned last time that we'll be having monthly digest as well. Those monthly digests will not be covering all these certification topics and anything. We'll be covering like real security incidents from the cloud perspective. And I have already lined up the guests for next week. So in next week episode, we will be covering security incidents which really happened last year, 3 of them with one of our industry expert, and we'll be going through with them questions around why it happened, what you would have done differently, and what we should learn from that. So this will be like a real kind of like rigorous task for them to solve our queries around that and how they think they should have done like something differently and what they feel like we should be doing as part of like making this whole world and those whole infrastructure, whatever we are doing around that, secure and much better place to live. So that's all for today's episode, and I'll catch you up in the next week episode. Goodbye and good luck.